Remember that security, it's not just about protecting assets. It's about empowering your business to grow confidently.
The mandate to the design team is that anything that you're doing, every aspect of what you're doing, I need you to always be questioning, is that likely to create a support liability?
With Canadian small businesses employing 5.7 million people, the efficiency and reliability of their security systems are paramount.
Not having to spend millions of dollars on advertising and marketing because you came up with something that everybody wants.
The Canadian SME Small Business Podcast presents a discussion on access control systems and simplicity in technology. In 2022, small businesses in Canada employed 5.7 million people, 46.8% of the private labor force, highlighting the need for secure access control systems. I'm your host, Kripa Anand, joined by an industry veteran who has been shaping electronic security since the 1970s. Today's guest is Fred Dawber, a pioneer in card access control for over 40 years. He started as an access control manager at the Bank of Montreal, implementing systems in Canada. In 1979, he established Cansec Systems to develop access control systems. In 1987, he founded Cansec Consulting Ltd for large-scale projects. With deep experience and innovation, Fred excels in designing electronic access control hardware and software using cards, mobile credentials, and biometrics. Join us as we explore how simplicity and innovation in this field can benefit Canadian entrepreneurs and SMEs. Welcome to the podcast, Fred. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Definitely, it's our pleasure. Now, to begin with, let's start the discussion by talking about simplifying security. As of December 2022, small businesses in Canada represent 97.8% of all employer businesses. With such a significant presence, it's crucial to understand how user-friendly security systems can empower enterprises. Now, Fred, you're a strong advocate for simplicity in access control, correct? Are simplicity and capability mutually exclusive in access control systems, or can they coexist in a space to create more effective solutions? What's your take?
Yeah, they absolutely can coexist. Fundamentally, what tends to happen is as technology gets more powerful and there's faster processing chips, more powerful software, there's a temptation for people to fill up whatever the resource is.
Right.
Until the bucket is full, and then you stop. And that's very, very dangerous to do. You do not want to be filling up the capabilities till you fill up the bucket. You want to look at what are the functions that people need and want, and only those are the ones that you should be concerned with. There's a very simple, it is fundamentally harder to make a simple product than it is to make a complicated one. That seems counterintuitive, but it actually does work that way. If you set out to design a product without the goal of trying to make sure it's simple, you will end up with a product which is complicated. It happens all by itself. So the goal is that at every phase of the product design and development, you always have to be reminding yourself, I need to keep it simple. What is an opportunity to make it simple? And simple does not mean not powerful.
Right.
Fundamentally, the process is that in designing a product, there will typically be a full range of capabilities. But what happens all the time is only 90% of those functions are going to be used all the time.
Right.
So the trick is to look at what overall the functionality is, determine what are all the things that are going to be used most of the time, and make sure those are prominent.
Right.
So, for instance, if you're looking at a piece of software when you initially log on, what should be there immediately presented is all the things that people are going to use 90% of the time.
Right.
And not to have them have to dig down through multiple menu levels to find those things. And the beauty of it is if you do that, you can achieve the goal of hiding all the complicated things. So the things that people don't care about, they're not even going to know they exist because they don't see them. They don't have to worry about them. But it takes a concerted effort at all phases in design to make sure you honor that goal. But they're absolutely not mutually exclusive.
Definitely, that's a very fascinating approach, I'd say. Your approach, it seems to challenge the common notion that's out there, right? That more features automatically mean that better security. To help our listeners understand better how cloud-based solutions, simplify access control system development, it not only enhances security, but also makes these systems less daunting for business owners, I'd say. This is a big win for Canada's 1.19 million small businesses, allowing them to, focus on growth instead of just, wrestling with complicated technology. Now, while we're on the topic of supporting business growth, let's move to another area of your expertise, that is the potential to be a game changer. Small businesses now are a powerhouse in the Canadian economy, right? We all know that. They contribute 46.8% to the entire nation's GDP. Now, this underscores the need for security solutions that can adapt and grow alongside these businesses. Now, Fred, you've highlighted the importance of modular design in access control systems. Uh, Based on that, for all the listeners out there who don't know what this terminology means, for just explain it from a layman's perspective, how does modular system design and access control benefit businesses, especially as they grow, their security needs evolve as well, right? So what's your take?
So one of the things that you would have to address with any new product is, and let's say it's a piece of hardware, which in the case of access control, that's what ultimately it is. And you need to look at what are all the ranges of the functions that it does. And what you'll find invariably, they will separate into two categories. There will be all the low-level things. For instance, in an access control panel, the low-level things are interfacing and talking to all of the connected devices.
Right.
So that's basically all of the I/O stuff. There's not much decision making there. It's just managing the low-level I/O. And then there will be another set of functionality, which is the decision making part. So that will be where decisions such as an individual's card was presented at a door, the analysis of is that individual allowed at this door based on this time of the day, and if it's a holiday and a weekend. So it's basically where the decision gets made in terms of, am I going to let you through the door or not? And also, if it denies you or grants you access, it would also then record the fact that you were granted access or denied. And what we realized early on was that the developing one board that encompasses everything has the downside that a year after you design it, there will be new technology, faster chips, whatever, and now you have to redesign the whole thing. So the approach we took was to say, instead of having one circuit board in one of the products, let's have two. We'll have one which is all the low-level stuff, because that doesn't change, and separate all the other functions that really where the decision making is, and dedicate that to an industry standard, commonly available single board computer. That's the guy that does all the heavy lifting. So, and we had a lot of people say that's not a good idea to do, but that whenever you're doing anything new, you'll have a lot of people say if it was a good idea, somebody would have already done it.
Exactly.
Somebody's got to be first. So we basically made that decision to split it into two boards. the bottom one, which handles all the I/O, and that's a board that we design in-house,
Mhm.
our own hardware, our own firmware. And then for the decision making, all the heavy lifting, we're using a single board computer, and they talk to each other on a
Okay.
serial bus.
Right.
The benefit that that provides is that next year, when the technology advances,
Mhm.
I can take that in that single board computer, take it out, put in another one
Right. Replace it. Yeah.
without changing any of the lower level
Basics. Yeah.
stuff or any of the terminations. And I then get the benefit, all the benefit of evolving technology without having to every year re-engineer the whole solution. And just to give you sort of put it in perspective,
Mhm.
you know, like right now we are currently using Raspberry Pi boards as a
Mhm.
single board computer.
Mhm.
If I was to set out to make that board in the quantities that I make it, because I
Mhm.
don't make them in millions,
Right.
that board would be $400 or $500 because those boards are made in the millions.
Right.
So the cost saving is huge. It's not only the ability to evolve, to
Mhm.
have the product evolve as the technology evolves, but it also means that it's much more cost effective.
Got it. It sounds like the modular approach, it provides the ideal blend of flexibility and security, right? It allows businesses to scale their systems as needed without changing the entire core process of it. Now, this is especially, I would say, valuable for long-standing businesses as well, whose security requirements, right, they are bound to change over time. Attention, listeners, as we explore these innovative approaches to access control, remember that security, it's not just about protecting assets. It's about empowering your business to grow confidently. Whether you're a startup or an established SME, the principles we are discussing today can help you create a more secure, efficient, and scalable business environment. Stay tuned for more insights that could transform your approach to security and business management. Um, so now let's shift gears and drive into a more technical aspect of your work, that's pushing the boundaries of access control. With Canadian small businesses employing 5.7 million people, the efficiency and reliability of their security systems are paramount. Fred, you've been a pioneer in incorporating, single board computers, as you just mentioned, the SBCs, into access control. Now, specifically talking about them, how have, single board computers revolutionized control systems, and what specific advantages do they offer over, traditional approaches?
So I just correct one thing,
Mm-hmm.
like that they have not changed
Mm-hmm.
the industry because very few people have adopted it, and
Right.
mostly because they were afraid because nobody wants to be first. So it's in the process of being changed.
Right.
I mean, we would take some credit in terms of creating that
Right.
requirement, and we've been able to do that multiple times in the industry to
Right.
establish new things, and everybody then says, aha, must be a good idea, so let's do that. So the 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 real advantage with that approach
Right.
is that it it allows sophisticated technology to be applied to small systems.
Mm.
And a big part of our focus is small systems. Just to put it in perspective, the the fundamental benefit of access control, which is everybody has a card, it uniquely identifies who they are.
Right.
I can then, if I don't want you to get in anymore, I can just take your card out of memory and it's gone. I can, because every card is unique, I know when you come in because I can audit it. Those kind of fundamental benefits have always been a big advantage over traditional keys and locks, because with keys and locks, everybody that's going through that door, their key is exactly the same.
Right.
So if I don't want you to go through the door anymore and you don't give me your key back, I have to change the lock, reissue keys to everybody. It's very logistically, it's not a good thing. So the benefit of having individual credentials that are identified by individual people has always been a desirable thing to do. The problem is it was very expensive. When I first started doing access control, putting a reader on a door and having control with all the cool functionality,
Right.
that could be $20,000 a door.
Right.
So that means banks were doing it in data centers, and it was not technology that would be practical for smaller businesses. As the costs have come down, it now is cost effective for even very small operations.
Right.
I mean, a lot of the systems we sell go into facilities where they only have access, they have control on the front door, and they have 10 employees. And it's still cost effective. It scales down to the very small operations. That's really the thing that is where the big benefit is. It's always been a good idea. It just was too expensive
Right.
for small users. Now it's no longer too expensive for small users. And the market for the small ones is bigger because there's a lot of small companies out there with 10, 15, 20 employees. They can all benefit from all the benefits of access control. And now it's cost effective to do.
Right. Now, very interestingly, you just pointed out that it has still not changed the industry landscape, but it's still in the process of doing so. Now, another, this question is completely candid. It just came into my mind right now. Why do you think this is? That, because a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs also, even though they take risks, they start a business, they're very hesitant when it comes to adopting new technologies or, changing their perspective or trying out something new. Why do you think, where's this challenge coming? Is it a mindset shift? What is it according to you?
I think it boils down to nobody wants to be first. It's usually if you propose an idea about something new to most people, their reaction is going to be, well, if it was a good idea, people would already be doing it.
Right.
And that closes the door. So at some point, somebody's got to say, well, I know nobody's doing it, but I believe it's the right thing. What I always refer to that is, and I claim it as one of my superpowers, and maybe I only have one, I don't know, but I always say I have the ability to look over the horizon a bit. So
Got it.
I'm not looking at what's everybody doing. See, because here's the other thing that usually happens, and I get it all the time as being a developer. People will say, well, you should be doing this. And I'll say, why? They said, well, because that's what everybody's doing. And then my counter to that is, that's exactly the reason for me not to do it.
Right.
Because it's much like saying, it's much like saying I should join this race. Oh, but the race started 2 days ago. I'm not going to win. I don't have a hope in hell. So, and unless you're a very big company and you can create trends and you have money to push ideas, you need to depend on having something which you figured out people need and will want.
Right.
And nobody else has it but you. Now you have a window of opportunity where you're going to have people seeking you out, not having to spend millions of dollars on advertising and marketing because you came up with something that everybody wants.
Right.
And we've had a history of doing that for many, many years. Not all of them were right. Sometimes they were just bad ideas.
Right.
But it also recalls that whole thing of, well, if people would have asked Henry Ford what they want, they would have said faster horses, because nobody had cars.
Right.
And I think that's what ends up happening, So I always resist that. If everybody's doing it, then I don't want to because they started first and I have to catch up. I want to be the first one to do it and then let them spend time catching up.
That's a very interesting perspective right there. And I think I've also learned so many things from you just by, half of this conversation in the podcast. So I'm looking forward to the next questions as well. Because what I liked about this is your way of thinking. You're not thinking about doing what everyone else is doing or being the best at it. You want to start something own, something unique. And that is exactly what sets any business apart, right? Being unique. So you're sticking, corely to the unique selling point that you have. So amazing. Let's take a quick break here. When we return, we will explore the innovative role of single board computers in security.
Hey, you think you know UPS? Yeah, that's us. Everybody knows that. You know what you didn't know? This. Okay, try to keep up. Ocean, us. Ground, rail, air, so us. Guess who? Us. Customs cleared, borders cleared, done. Us. You still with me? Wait for it. Boom. Us. Intelligent, automated, fulfillment. Us. Yep. Healthcare too. Digital your thing? Yeah. Well, book it, ship it, track it. You feeling me yet? Yep. That's all us. That's all UPS.
At IHG Hotels and Resorts, we're in the business of you.
We're here to help you plug in,
connect and recharge,
make an impression,
and meet with confidence.
With 19 brands built for business,
your business gets even more rewarding.
With an award-winning loyalty program at 6,000 IHG hotels and resorts worldwide.
Welcome back, listeners. We've discussed some exciting aspects of access control, and now let's dive into how single board computers are transforming the industry. Now, let's shift gears. Let's talk about beyond the technology itself. Let's talk about a crucial factor that impacts both, the providers and users of access control systems. Now, small businesses are a vital part of Canada's, job creation process. As these businesses expand, having systems that require, minimal support, it becomes increasingly important. Now, Fred, you've spoken about the concept of engineering out support in your work, right? Now, what is the secret, if I may ask, to minimizing support liabilities in access control systems? And how does this benefit both the parties mutually, the provider and the end user?
So that's a very, very popular topic for me. So and again, it comes back to having an objective that you impose. Well, not impose, that sounds like it's, it's not politically correct, but basically, the mandate to the design team is that anything that you're doing, every aspect of what you're doing, I need you to always be questioning, is that likely to create a support liability? Mm-hmm. And you can't leave it to the end because it's too late. And the other thing that we have done forever is that my senior manager in charge of technical support has a big say over what goes out the door, and he is ruthless in terms of he will look at everything in terms of, is that going to make my phone ring? Because if it does, every time the phone rings, it costs money. Right. Like typically product support, if somebody has a problem and they have to call for support, they're expecting support to be free, unless you're General Motors or, Microsoft, then you pay. But everybody else, if I have a problem and I need to call for support, I'm not expecting to pay for it. It's free. Well, for the manufacturer, that means that there's a cost associated with that. Mm-hmm. And I always tell people, you have to be careful not to have a big celebration because you sold $100,000 worth of something. Right. Because if there's a big support liability, 10 years from now, you may have all of that money that you made on it may have leaked back out. It's silent, but it has a definite cost. Right. So as the manufacturer, I'm always looking at support liability. How can I get rid of it? And if you engineer the whole product that way, you can never take it all out, but you can certainly take most of it out.
Right.
And from the customer standpoint, that's a good thing, because if they never have to make a support call, that means nothing ever went wrong. That's a good thing,
Right.
So there's no such thing as a good support call. It's always bad news. So if you can have 0 support calls,
That's good news.
then you've done a good job.
Right. Again, amazingly articulated. Dear folk, as we've been exploring these innovative approaches to access control, it's important to remember that security is not just about keeping threats out. It's about creating an environment where your business can thrive. The principles we've discussed today, from simplicity to modular design and efficient support, all of them contribute to a security ecosystem that supports rather than hinders your business's growth. As you consider your own security needs, think about how these approaches could help you create a more resilient, efficient, and scalable business. And speaking of innovation, let's move to our final topic for the day, which focuses on streamlining access control. Now, efficient employee access management is essential, right? Especially with small businesses making up such a large proportion of the Canadian workforce. Now, Fred, you've developed systems with advanced provisioning capabilities. How does provisioning work in access control systems, first of all? And what are the key benefits, if you could just give quick pointers for businesses, especially for, in terms of security and efficiency?
It's a good idea. You reminded me it should be quick, because I'm not famous for short stories. I'm more famous for long stories. So basically, the whole concept of provisioning, easiest way to visualize it is that, for instance, one of the products we make is a small control panel. And that control panel can support either 2 access control entrances or 4. It's exactly the same device. Whether you buy it for 2 doors or 4 doors, you're buying exactly the same device.
Right.
Cost me exactly the same. Now, if I sell it for 4 doors, I'm going to make a lot more margin. If I sell it for 2 doors, I'll still make margin, but it's not going to be as good.
Right.
What I did is I decided to take the gamble that let's allow them to buy it for 2 doors, provision for 2 doors, at about half the price for 4. So you're getting the same unit, but you're in effect only paying for half of it.
Right.
If then when the customer or the end user decides, I really like this access control stuff is cool, I want to add another 2 doors onto it, the box you already have has the ability to hook up another set of doors.
Right.
So what we do basically is, if you decide you want to add the other ones on, what you do is purchase a provisioning code. It's just a software key that we can download into the unit, and it turns on the other doors. So what it does is it means that for the people who say, well, I really only want 2 doors, I'm not forcing them to buy
the entire
a 4-door
right.
controller. And when I do training on it, I usually will ask people the trick question, which is, what's the best number of doors for a controller to support, 2 doors or 4 doors? And I will wait, and nobody answers because it's a stupid question probably, but I will give them the answer, which the answer is yes. If you need 2 doors, then a 2-door controller is right. If you need 4-door. And that has worked out extremely, extremely well.
Right.
And it's also been very helpful in terms of the channel, because we sell direct to installing dealers. We don't sell to end users because there's an install component. We sell to direct dealers, or we sell to distributors. Distribution is a big part of the chain for us. When we take this panel and we sell it through a distributor, that distributor only buys and inventories the cost for the 2-door. if someone wants 4, they sell them one of those, and he sells them a provisioning code. Well, they don't inventory the provisioning code. So distributors like it because it can dramatically reduce the cost of them carrying the inventory. So it has multiple benefits.
Definitely, it sounds like a valuable tool for businesses, right, to manage access effectively and securely. Now, Fred, as we wrap up our conversation, and I really don't want to, but we have time constraints, so I can't really do anything about it. So before we let you go, I have one final question for you, okay? What advice would you like to give for all the small business owners who are listening to you right now, all the startup people, all the entrepreneurs, all the founders? How do they, upgrade their access control systems? If you wanted to suggest one thing that they do right after listening to you, this podcast, what should they do?
I guess given that these will probably be all smaller organizations,
right?
I would say the trick is to look for solutions which were designed for small,
right?
Because predominantly the whole industry has been governed and managed by manufacturers making huge systems. Right. It's like I said, banks and airports, and that's where the industry access grew up. So a lot of the companies out there, that's what their focus is big stuff, enterprise systems. The problem is that those big systems don't scale down. So if you have a system that will do 2,000 doors or 3,000 doors and 150,000 employees, but now you want to have 2 doors and 100 employees, they do not scale down. So you need to look for products right from the get-go that were designed for the low end, the smaller systems marketplace. Because they do not, big ones don't scale down. When we approach new dealers, very often they'll say, well, we already have such and such a system we're selling. I don't need yours. I'll always remind them, well, when you get a requirement for only 8 or 10 doors,
right,
does your current system work? And they say, no, it doesn't. We usually don't get those. And my comeback is, well, then why don't you carry mine as well? So you'll be able to get the small ones and the big ones. But it's really important that they do not scale down. So, and the other thing I would say is you want to look for Canadian manufactured if you can, because there's a lot of really, really inexpensive, product out there that comes from overseas. Not to knock anybody, but a lot of it is quality is not great.
Up to the mark, right?
And also support is not good because, for instance, we don't have anything made offshore, and the reason is that if somebody calls me and they have a problem, I want to be able to get the engineer that wrote the software, the guy that made the board, and get him on a speakerphone. And we're going to solve that problem quickly. If I have to say, well, I have to raise a ticket and send it to the company in India,
long
the
process,
software, because sometimes when those calls come, also, it's a little different. It's not like it's usually I can't get through the door, I can't get in the computer room, or So this is urgent stuff. You can't say, well, okay, someone will call you back in 48 hours and. It doesn't work. There's an urgency. So it's beneficial to find product which is manufactured locally and supported locally. Because when you have that problem and you can't get in the computer room, right, you're not going to want to be told 48 hours or so someone's going to call you. So, and then of course the obvious, which is references.
Right.
You should never buy anything without getting references from other people who put in similar size.
Right, and they can vouch for it. So definitely, that's some great advice, Fred. And at the end, I'd like to, put special emphasis on one thing that we talked about in the beginning: be simple. Sometimes we get lost in in so many options and making it complicated unnecessarily. And it does not really mean that complicated options are the most secure ones or the better ones always. Sometimes the beauty, the power lies in the most simplest of the things. And we should all take this away from today's podcast and by listening to Fred. Thank you so much, Fred, for being here and doing this. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining this episode of the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. We explored innovative access control solutions that enhance security, business efficiency, and growth for over 1.19 million small businesses in Canada. Security can be simple, allowing even small enterprises to adopt enterprise-level solutions. We thank our guest Fred Dawber for his insights and our sponsors, of course, RBC, UPS, IHG Hotels and Resorts, and Google for their unwavering support. For more resources on small business management, visit CanadianSME.ca. Subscribe to stay updated on future episodes with industry leaders and innovators and so much more. This is Kripa Anand signing off. Remember, in business security, less is more and innovation is key. Stay safe, stay secure, and keep innovating. And don't forget the power of simplicity.